right, off and running, episode 5 of The Athlete's Edge. And today we have a very special guest. First of all, I'll give us our social platforms and websites. At Pure Vita Labs, a social shop, online at purevitалabs.com. And today's episode brought to you by Total Reload. Recover today and be better tomorrow. So episode 5, The Athlete's Edge, we're off and running. And we have with us today very special guy. I actually was on his podcast yesterday with him and his business associate, but very happy to have with me today Gaetan Boutin, who is a high performance coach with Strong Athlete, who, you know, is a big supporter of PVL. But really, you know, on our podcast, we usually have been talking and going down the road with professional athletes and how they got to where they are, their journey, etc. Today, we get to go into the world of the guys that are high performance coaches that actually drive these guys. And we talk about from all levels, high performance mindset, coaching, nutrition. I mean, you name it. These guys prepare athletes to be athletes and really good people. So happy to have you here today, G.
It's a pleasure to be on the show, brother. I get goosebumps. It sounds so funny, but you're just describing like the things that we get to do. And I still get goosebumps just hearing it, how we help athletes with, you know, X, Y, or Z. It's, you know, you're doing the right thing. And we were talking on our podcast the other day about just how things seem to fit. And when they fit, it's an amazing feeling. And like, I've been doing this for like over 10 years and I still get goosebumps every time I feel like what I'm actually doing. So it's pretty cool. So
just, you know, sort of fast forwarding to today, you know, we've all been like, geez, I have an appointment to go to the gym on Friday. And then that's the first time since March. Your whole life is getting people. You guys have a high performance center here in Mississauga.
Yeah.
And what has that been like and how has it changed the day to day? I want to get into how, you know, you built this business, but how is that delay, you know, how have you pivoted? Is it online coaching? What's happened with Strong Athlete while everyone's been in lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we coach our athletes on is adaptability. So we train our athletes, again, mindset's a huge part of our coaching protocol. And adaptability as an athlete is one of the biggest things we train. And I feel like this whole COVID thing threw it back in my face a little bit and forced me to continue to be adaptable. So essentially, it's been the rule of work with what you got and we'll figure something out. So, you know, initially, everything pretty much shut down. So we were doing Zoom. I was doing a lot of Zoom sessions with a bunch of my athletes. I took a bunch of equipment out of our training center and kind of drove it over and left it on the doorstep of a bunch of my athletes because I know what they need to work on. So I've literally took equipment from my gym and went door to door and dropped it on athletes' doorsteps and said, cool, our Zoom session is tomorrow. We're going to take you through the workout. So that was kind of the initial thing. And then when the social distancing thing started to, like, you know, you could have groups of 5, for example, I was going and meeting up with some athletes, you know, outside, outdoors in certain places of keeping, you know, the same rules in place and working with them that way. So basically I've been on the edge of what's been, let's say, approved and finding ways to maximize the situations given what's improved. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of Zoom stuff, a lot of outdoor stuff. And then once we got like approval to do, athletes were approved to train indoors, like before gyms were been open. So we have a private facility. So we had a bunch of our athletes coming in, of course, one-on-ones, distancing, but getting them going. So it's been difficult, but it's also been refreshing. You know, it's been a change of pace. It also has given us a chance to work with things on athletes that they didn't have time to work on before, which for some athletes has been a blessing in disguise, if that makes sense.
Has that, it's challenging, you know, when you're not physically able to be with someone. I imagine you have to do it through a screen and you're sort of staring at them doing their workouts and exercises. Did largely people, or were they motivated enough to put in the work that you were happy with, or was it a challenge to sort of, because people at home, I mean, there's been a lot, they talk about the quarantine 15, that people have been putting on weight because they're at home, and some people's exercise is only walking to the refrigerator to get more food. I mean, it is a real challenge. Now, athletes, you know, have to be disciplined as it is, but was that tough to get these guys more motivated?
Well, there's two parts, I think, to that answer. So I specialize and work mainly with athletes, but just to give that flip side, I end up working with the parents of athletes a lot.
Sure.
And
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I do have a lot of, and I actually work with people that have come out of surgeries, cancer patients, people with like hip replacements, knee replacements, because I am like a kinesiologist as well. So I have clients that are not necessarily performance athletes. And to sound really funny, like everyone who I work with, there's a thorough process of qualifying them, which basically means I'll work with anybody as long as we both agree that they take this seriously. And there's kind of some steps that we go through to ensure that it's the right fit. And again, I'm at a point in my career, I'm fortunate, where I will only work with people who are committed to their results. So I hasn't had any issues of someone like not following or not being engaged because I had qualified them so much in advance. So that would be like, let's say that's the non-athletes. Those people have been great. They're like, whatever, let's get on Zoom. I just, I need your guidance on certain things. So that's actually been pretty good. The hard part with the athletes, brother, has been the uncertainty of what they're preparing for. So we're always,
That's
with this
point.
mindset of like setting a target and we're preparing for that target, whether it's training camp, the season, maybe we're in season and we're working on certain things that we can work on in season. Maybe we just got out of season and we're kind of doing what we call like a body retooling or a body redevelopment, just kind of like get them moving in ways that are inconsistent with their sport. If they've been moving to somewhere in their sport, we want to move them like the total opposite way for a couple weeks. So there's always like a plan given where we're at. But the hard part has been like, where are we at? Because seasons are getting canceled, seasons are getting delayed. So that's been the biggest challenge of having these young athletes visualize what they're preparing for. So there's been a lot of deep conversation in terms of, what are you preparing for? And when you're called upon, will you be ready?
Yep.
And it's been more of a mindset training, I think, for the first couple of weeks during COVID than it was anything physical. And to be honest with you, I think I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I think this is relevant. A lot of younger athletes these days are doing too much. There's too much on their plate. That's actually one of my
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that then. And then, so this was honestly a time for them to kind of step back. And I support that. And I'm like, okay, don't do any X, Y, or Z, but just do this kind of stuff. So again, as difficult as it's been, there's a silver lining in everything. And I think it's been really beneficial to a lot of my athletes and still a lot of unknown variables for other ones.
Yeah. So, and I want to dig into all that, mindset and preparation and visualization and all the stuff that goes into making great athletes. And I'm sure you have great stories of, some of the guys that you've prepared and turned around. But how did you sort of get into this on the level that you have? Because, obviously you've got great education, great background, great knowledge.
Yeah.
Not only, it's so far beyond, like we talked about, a personal trainer, which is just sort of almost a bad word in some cases. You're so much higher than that. And so talk about you. And I know your partner, we got to give a shout out to P.K Mills.
Yeah,
too.
Big shout out to Coach PK.
Yeah, great guy. And I just really am interested. We talked sort of about my journey yesterday into getting where I am. You, I think I heard maybe some Lansing Build All and Muscle Mag as a young guy, but totally. Where did you kind of go from there, or getting to where you're at now? It's really cool.
Yeah, well, I think like I could tell you the story could take all day, but for the listeners, enjoyment, I'll try to make it short. Like growing up, I played pretty much every sport you can imagine. I excelled at contact sports. It seemed to be the case. I don't know why.
I like to mess it up.
I like to mix it up. I love playing football. Hockey, I was never that skilled, but you never wanted to play against me. I can promise you that. But I was the nicest guy too. It's one of the things that I would hit you, but I would say sorry or I'd help you up. It's the weirdest thing. And then basically at the end of high school, I went to York. I went to York for kinesiology, health sciences.
Great program.
Yeah, and an honors science degree, because at that time I wanted to become a doctor. Like that was my vision. So I was focusing on like neuromuscular physiology, regional anatomies, chemistries, like all of these, the worst courses you can imagine. I was taking those because I wanted to get into med school. And then like second year university, my dad got really sick. And I spent a lot of time in the hospital with him. And dude, I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated the hospital. I hated being in there. It was just like, and I think we spoke about this the other day, like watching people die in there and then seeing people bring them like apple juice and a grilled cheese sandwich with macaroni and cheese. And I'm like, it just blew my mind because, oh yeah, Ensure, like that's the healthy thing. And just that whole lifestyle was like, this is not for me. Like even at like 20 years old, I was sourcing out organic food, and we're going back.
Oh man, hard to find. Yeah.
We're going back like 21 years now, right? Like I was looking for certain types of foods. I was, eating a certain way. I basically had a mentor who was my buddy's dad at the time, and we'll get in that real quick. So it just, that was not the lifestyle for me. So, I finished my degree with basically a degree in kinesiology and with a minor in neuromuscular physiology. And I was working at, like I said, a building place, and then Muscle Mag opened up near my house. And I'm like, I'm so into training and stuff. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I ended up getting a job there, and it was super cool. And I was competing. I don't know if I told you this before. I don't know if you knew this, but I was competing on the national kickboxing team.
No, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
So that was like, that's what I graduated into after hockey and football and high school was done. I wasn't good enough to play those sports at a higher level than that, but fighting just kind of showed up on my doorstep. It was my best friend's family business. They had a whole business around that stuff. So I got into that. And then I made the national team, and then I fought for Canada on the international pro-am circuit. So I fought around like all over the US, and my coach at the time was a world champion, and he basically had Team Canada. He was the coach of Team Canada, but he had this little side team. He would bring us guys on his fight cards. So he was a pro, obviously, and we would fight on those big cards. So there's like, 5,000 people in these places. I fought in casinos, I fought in bars, I fought in like Syracuse University Stadium, you name it. I fought in like Indian reserves.
Sports.
Yeah, it was a shady in many cases. But competing in that, it was such like, and I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I'm going to kind of bring it all together. Yeah. That was like my life lessons of like what it really is to be a world-class athlete, what it takes to get there. And, like I was pretty good, but I never thought I was as good as I could have been. And then I got injured. So I was working at Muscle Mag, got injured, hip injury. Rehabbed that myself. The doctor said I would never play sports again, and I'm going to need a hip surgery. And I'm like, no, I don't think. I'm only like 21 at that
Wow,
point.
that's a big message to get.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm working at Muscle Mag, and this guy comes in, and he's a rep for Muscle Tech, right? And at that time, yes. Muscle Tech was like, EAS, we talked about this the other day, EAS and Muscle Tech were like the big dogs in the supplement industry.
Yep.
So I just started talking to him, and he realized that I have a pretty good education and I'm fairly intelligent. And he's like, you ever interested in working for the company? I'm like, sure, it sounded cool. I'm pretty much just finishing up university. So I go into interviews, and I got hired at Muscle Tech. They're like, when can you start? I'm like, can I finish university first? And they were kind of shocked, right? So I started there. Yeah. Yeah, man, it was great. I finished my exams. I had a week off, and I started at this company, and I was basically formulating supplements. So I was a bit of a science geek at the time. I was formulating supplements. I was helping develop programs for the athletes. And then they knew that I wasn't the bodybuilder type. I don't have a bodybuilding. It's
not your thing, yeah.
No. I'm 6'5", like 230, kind of long and lean, good for combat sports, not so good for bodybuilding. But, they respected that in the sense of they wanted to get into other avenues. They were working with the Ottawa Senators at the time, and I had a lot of knowledge. So I kind of started doing that, and then got back into fighting again because I had fixed my hip, and I started competing and fighting. And that was always entertaining. So I'm working at a corporate facility, and on the weekends, I'm going to fight in the U.S., and I'm coming back on Monday. And if you ever seen a fighter after they fight, their face doesn't look the best. So you got bruises all over your face. You got these blood marks on your face. You're kind of wearing like sunglasses / glasses, and you don't need glasses. I don't need glasses to
No.
work. So that was kind of fun. So I kind of did that, like fighting in the weekends and working corporate during the week. And I did that for a number of years until finally, like, I just couldn't do it anymore. It was too much. And then at that point, I realized that, like, I just love performance and I have all the knowledge, I have all the experience, and I just continued to educate myself and take courses and work with people. And I was working with athletes for free for many years and just
Would you
growing
just
that knowledge.
sort of approach them like a lot of big, I think a lot of building that business for you, I mean, it's word of mouth almost 100%, right? I mean, this guy worked with me. He's fantastic. Is that sort of how it spread for you?
Yeah, like even today, I'm going to say 99% of my business is referral. It's all referral. We have a really cool website. If you go on and check it out.
That's actually fantastic. Yeah, strongathlete.com.
Very professional. But I don't get people to go onto my website and then send me a message, say, hey, I want to work with you. Like, social media people follow me, but I don't really get clients that way either. It's all referral. This guy helped my kid, for example, to get to the next level. He's the guy. And yeah, that's how all my business comes. And to be honest with you, most people come to me with a problem. That's kind of what I specialize in.
Is it generally a physical problem, or are they just sort of, I always ask, these athletes, sort of what point did you know you were there? Or, I think a lot of guys sort of float around and they're just about good enough and they spend so much time and then they don't get there. Do you kind of get those people that are on the brink trying to say, what else can I do? Or am I not serious enough? Is it that kind of broad, or is it more specific?
I think it's more specific in the sense of, first of all, like, to answer your question, I don't separate physical issues with mindset issues.
Interesting.
I don't separate those two things. Okay. So when I work with someone, it's a holistic approach. There's a full intake of their physical history, their mental history, we'll call it, for lack of a better term right now.
Sure.
Their nutritional history. All of those things work together. So when someone comes at my door, they usually come with a challenge, to your point. So they've had an injury they just can't seem to get over, and they've seen everybody. They come and see me, or they want to get to the next level, like you just said, and they're just not sure what they need to do to get there. Or they were there and they kind of took a step backwards and they want to get back there. So it's kind of the full gamut, to be honest with you, is what comes in the door. I think initially it was physical, and then people start to realize that I do the mindset coaching, and then how I integrate those things. You come in with a knee problem, I tell you your knee problem has nothing to do with your knee. It has to do with your mindset.
Yep.
And it's like, what that doesn't even mean. There's tons of research, great research on this stuff. And then we start to just kind of build them from the ground up and rebuild them. The problem with a lot of athletes, as you know, they're trained in group settings and they're trained in what we call boot camp style training, especially at a young age. And can I swear on this show, by the way?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, good. It's a fucking shit show.
Yeah.
It's just like what we call punishment training, fucking running them, trying to make them exhausted. So the parents have to basically carry them off the floor and take them home. And everyone thinks, hey, that was a great workout.
Because you destroyed my son or daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is the worst fucking thing you could do, in my opinion. And they think that that's working. And here's a good stat for you. Nowadays, here's how athletes work. 19, surgery, 21, retired. This is the majority of
young
kids.
Yeah. There's just no staying power. There's no lasting.
Yeah. And it's not just that. It's like people who are quote unquote training athletes, they're not technical specialists, meaning they can't watch the athlete move a certain way and correct their movement. It's like, okay, do this squat, do this lunge, do this jump because I saw it on YouTube or Instagram or I read it in a book. Great. Yes. But they don't have context of what they're trying to achieve with the athlete. And there's this huge gap between you're actually hurting the athlete. And then there was this I'm going on tangent, but let me just quickly finish this.
Yeah,
one.
No.
If you've ever heard of sports specific training, sure, which is this hot buzzword, which came out 15 years ago, let's say. It was a hot thing 15 years ago, and these places like SST and all these places started opening
specifically,
up.
Yeah.
This was the fucking destruction of many athletes, because people
Really?
who are not so experienced training athletes took this concept, and let's just say you're a baseball player and you throw a baseball. So now I'm going to give you a weighted baseball. I'm going to make you do that same motion. I'm going to hook you up to the cable machine
Right.
and have you do the throwing motion with weights. Or I'm going to have you do a hitting motion with
Right.
weights. I'm going to make you skate pulling somebody. It's like they're basically taking the same movements of the sport and they're adding weight.
Yep.
And this has been the worst thing that I've seen in working with athletes in my history.
Is it? I mean, and I want to talk about some of the young guys and this and that, but you touched on earlier how, there's a lot of overtraining. And one of the things that you see now, I mean, it used to be, and I think one of the things about becoming a well-rounded athlete is sort of, it used to be you kind of played one sport in one season, you played another in another, and you sort of got well-rounded. And now, for instance, something like hockey, there's no off switch. I mean, these kids are getting, 5-6 times a week. It's practice, it's games. It doesn't seem to ever end. Physical burnout, mental burnout. I mean, how do you, I know there's a lot of parents that want to push because they think more is better, but how do you temper that and deal with that?
So I think you'll appreciate this statement. I don't believe in overtraining. I don't think that that's a concept. I believe in under recovery.
That's great.
So everyone talks about overtraining, but no one's talking about recovery. And we kind of joked, I think, on our podcast when you had you on about recovery supplements and how no one's excited about that because it's not sexy, right? Like it's not going to make
exactly. You're right. They don't perform.
They're not sexy, right? Because people want performance because they think it's all about performance. But if you understand how training works, you get better when you're resting. You don't get better when you're training because you need that rebound, right? So I don't think there's overtraining. I think there's under recovery.
It's funny to interject there because you get a lot of talk about. I think it's funny when a pitcher in baseball, for instance, is very specific, but gets tested for and gets caught for anabolic steroids. Well, the common person would say, "Well, what the hell? That guy doesn't look like he's on steroids." Or, Lance Armstrong. They don't take it for muscle bulk and a bodybuilder's thing. They're playing 162 game season in baseball. The body breaks down, and you're right. It's recovery. That's why, at that dramatic aspect, that's what happens. They take it for recovery so they can perform at the same level the next day and the next day and the next day. The body doesn't want to do that naturally.
Yeah. Oh man. So that's kind of a can of worms that we can open up. Like if you want to talk about PEDs, like I'll go down that road with you in a second. And people don't understand the pressure and the expectation that's put on athletes.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And, for baseball, they're playing like 165 games a season. And the body, like they're on the road 24/7. And anabolic steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, to your point, are used primarily for recovery. They're not used for super compensation, meaning like make you a superhuman. These guys are already superhumans.
Yeah.
Most athletes that make it big, they're freak shows. They're not normal people. And they're just trying to maintain their baseline. They're not trying to cheat, or they're just trying to maintain their career and be healthy. So unfortunately, like PEDs is a huge misconception among the general public. And you want to see these guys play 165 games and you want to see them hit freaking home runs and have these home run chases and all these things. And then they get a test positive and now you fucking alienate them and their management alienates them. It's like, it's embarrassing when I watch it from a public standpoint because obviously I'm behind the scenes.
The rejection.
That people don't see, but like, man, that's disgusting. But so just to answer your previous question real quick about how do I manage like the overtraining stuff or the under recovery, when I have an athlete come in the door the first time, I make what I call a family meeting. Okay. So like the whole family needs to come. Everyone needs to come and we need to sit down and have a family conversation because I am taking them on for the next 10 years is what I say. This is a 10-year project. I will be the guy that sees everything for this athlete where other people don't spend the time. So Meaning, like, let's say it's just hockey, for example. We keep bouncing around with sports, which is fun because I work with athletes from all different types of sports. I'm not going to be their hockey coach. I'm not going to be their skating coach or their shooting coach,
Right.
but I'm going to be the one that helps them coordinate their week. So they got a game this night, they got practice this night, they're with their shooting coach this day, they're with their skating coach this day. And I'm the guy that helps to see all that and modifies their schedule to help them get as much recovery as possible. And I use the gym or the training center as a recovery tool during the season, for example.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's a recovery tool. And I have to qualify. Everyone has to be in that meeting. Everyone has to agree because, parents come in, they pay good money to work with me, and their kid comes in on a Wednesday night and in the middle of the season, and they walk out of here with more energy and fresher than they did walking in. At first, the parents will be like, did you even work my kid out? Like, they're not sweating, they're not tired. And I always qualify from the beginning that we're going to do what's needed for them to perform better on the ice, or in this case, on the ice.
And that's a full rounded thing, right? Like you said, I'm not just I'm not going to teach you just a better wrist shot. I'm not going to just look at your skating. It's a 360 holistic approach.
Yeah. And if you're good at what you do, you're adaptable, as we talked about in the very beginning of this conversation. So I might have an athlete coming in, I have a whole plan of what I want to do with them. And I am constantly assessing my athletes, constantly. The minute they walk in the door, I'm assessing them, their body language, their eye contact, their language they're choosing, everything. I can tell right away where they're at physically and how well they're recovered. Like, I'm doing this long enough, I can tell.
Does that go into, sorry, go keep finish your thought there.
So just quickly. So like at any given second, I'll completely change what I want to do with them in that session. Like in 1 second, I'll be like, okay, cool, come in, get on that bike. We're just going to sit and talk. What?
So it's adaptable. It's adaptable.
It has to be. It has to be adaptable. And too many guys that are quote unquote trainers or strength coaches, they're so focused on their own friggin' plans and their executions that they fucking forget about the athlete. You know what I mean? They're so
cookie
focused
cutter
on,
to a degree.
Yeah, it's cookie cutter, and it's like some people get caught up in the fucking sense that they think their lifting workout is the most important thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not training athletes to lift weights. I'm training athletes to be better in their sport.
Yeah.
If you're playing better in your sport, that's all that matters to me.
So let's get, more specific. So you go through sort of the qualification process, and that sounds like it's a big deal for you because you know how much, it's going to be work for them, but it's a lot of work and commitment and time for you too, right? You probably could pick and choose basically, because there's a lot of people that, everyone wants their kid to be the next one, right? It's it's a pretty big process, but maybe get specific on a story or the most rewarding situation for you, whether it be took someone from what you thought was going to be nothing to something, or a tough case. Talk about maybe a very specific story that sort of resonates with you.
Dude, you get me all emotional, man. Like, I'm an emotional guy. So like,
it's all right.
When I talk about my athletes, I get emotional. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I'll try not to cry through this process. I'm not embarrassed about that.
No.
Because
this is what it's about, right? It's what it's about.
Dude, the stories that I've been able to witness are so moving that, like, it literally brings tears to my eyes every time I start talking to them.
Yeah.
Let me give an example. I don't want to name names, just
that's fair.
Anyone who knows me knows they'll know this person right away. But I had a hockey kid come to me one day, and I used to train his cousin, who was a soccer player, who came to me. The soccer player came in with a knee injury, a meniscus tear, and they wanted to remove his meniscus. Long story short, I said, don't do that. We rehabbed him, rebuilt him, and he's better than ever, no surgery. So he sends me his cousin, his little cousin. He's like 15 years old at the time, I guess. And he's got a clunky shoulder, has shoulder issues, and he's a great hockey player, but he's what we call a late bloomer. So he's playing like AAA hockey, doesn't get drafted to the OHL. So I'm not sure if you know the process. It's usually like you play AAA here.
Yeah,
I think you're familiar, right? You're familiar with the hockey process?
Sure, yeah.
You play AAA, which is the highest level, and then you get drafted to the OHL, which is like the Ontario Hockey League, which is like the big deal. And then from there you get drafted to the NHL, and hopefully a nice, fun, simple journey is AAA, OHL, NHL. It doesn't work that way in most cases, just for the record. So this kid never got drafted to the OHL, and he comes to me this summer, comes to me in April of that year, and Shoulders a fucking mess.
Oh, no.
He was doing CrossFit.
We talked about
15
that
years
yesterday too.
old. Like, yeah, like again, just to be clear, I love CrossFit, the sport, the competition, but using CrossFit to train someone or train athletes is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
So of course he was doing things that he shouldn't be doing. And the kid is a hyper mobile athlete, which means he's like Gumby. His flexibility is
The
excessive.
double jointed almost and
Yeah, basically, like it's not even double jointed; it's just like rubber. And again,
flexible.
this comes down to assessing athletes and making correct protocols. He comes in and starts stretching. I'm like, it sounds fine. You should never stretch again because that's not for you because you're already too flexible. So, anyways,
I've never heard that one, so this is a first.
yeah, so that's why you need to really be observant of what your athletes. You can't be cookie cutter, right? Of course, there's certain things that are foundational, but so he comes in April, and I'm like, great, you didn't get drafted. What do you want to do? He's like, I still want to play hockey. I'm like, are you good enough? And he's like, yeah.
Big question.
Yeah. I'm like, are you good enough? And I just joke with them.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, great. Where do you want to play in September? He's like, they all look at me, and I always ask this question, right? Where do you want to play next year? Or what's your 10-year goal? I always ask that. And they always look at me like a deer in headlights, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I'm like, hey, great. You don't know? He's like, no. I'm like, great. What are the top 3 teams in the OHL? This is what I say to the kid. And I'm a big guy. I'm a little intimidating. He's a little kid.
Yeah, sure. I bet.
We rhyme off these teams, right? And I'm like, great, pick one. And he's like totally on the spot. So he picks a team, and I'll tell you the team in a second. We'll get there. I'm like, great. Everything we're doing this summer is for you to make that team. And he goes, I don't know if I'm even going to get an invite because there's what's called the training camp invite, which means you didn't get drafted, but we'll bring you out and take a look at you, which basically means you're a piece of meat for all of their draft picks to use up. Does that make sense?
On, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're a piece of meat, essentially. They don't give a shit about you, and unfortunately, that's the case in sports.
Yep.
So we pick this team. I'm like, okay, your shoulder is not good. However, you could do surgery right now and pretty much be completely done, but we could give this a go and you can establish yourself, right? So we kind of took a risk. So I'm like, let's do it. So we did everything we could that summer. He was committed. He came every day, worked hard every day. And he had an agent at the time. Guess what? He gets a tryout for the team, right? Lo and behold, he gets a tryout because he had visualized. We had wrote his vision on his board in his bedroom, the team name. Almost every day he came in, I'm like, hey, what's going on with this team? Always saying that word, that team. It's a manifestation approach, right?
Interesting.
I'm going to get emotional here. He goes, tries out for the team, and fucking makes it. He makes
unreal.
The team.
Yeah.
Unheard of. So it was the London Knights.
Okay.
Which was the best team in the OHL at the time.
Sure.
They had like Max Domi.
Mm-hmm.
You know who that is?
Sure.
They had this guy, Mitch Marner. You might know his name.
Yep.
They had Vorak. They had all the guys there. Okay. The kid make the team, blows everyone away like this kid, right?
Amazing.
So the problem though, he made it. Realized it. It was a beautiful thing. They signed because they realized how good he is, but they've already had committed everybody. So there's limited spots on the team, right?
Okay.
And he's like a non-drafted rookie. So all the parents, and if you understand hockey, it's political.
Yeah.
All the parents want their drafted kid to play. Anyways, he plays. He goes up and down from their minor team to their team, does great, does the best he can do, and made it through that full season, and it was amazing. And then, eventually his shoulder gave out. He had to get surgery. Okay.
But he made it.
He made it. He made
like
the team. Okay. He gets surgery, comes back the next season, even better. Okay. Gets bounced around because it's all bullshit. Gets traded to another team, goes there, has an incredible season because he plays. And the fucking surgeon who did his first surgery did a shit job.
No.
Surgery, his shoulder goes out again. Okay, this has nothing to do with his training, like it's a genetic thing. He doesn't basically have the stability from his bone structure in his shoulder. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay, another second surgery, dude. Comes back, friggin' plays amazing. Okay, but then his career's done. So it's like, now what? He missed so many games because of surgeries, but he never quit. Okay,
that's amazing.
he comes home, and OHL has a pretty cool program where like every year you play in OHL, they'll pay for you to go to school in Canada, right?
Oh, that's great.
Which is a pretty
Yep.
cool program. So he goes to play at Guelph. Guelph has like one of the best hockey programs in the CIS. I know it's a long story, but you wanted to hear a great story, so I'm going
man,
down
that's
this
what
road.
it's about.
So he goes and plays in Guelph, and his first year to go to Guelph, he's about to go. His agent calls him, says, "Hey, we got a tryout for you for a pro team in the East Coast Hockey League." Okay, amazing. He goes down and was in Kansas City basically, and they're like the farm team of the Edmonton Oilers AHL team. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Goes down there, friggin' impresses the shit out of everybody. They sign him. Okay. But here's the thing. If you're drafted and you have what's called a two-way guarantee to the AHL, so it's NHL, AHL, and then this was the ECHL. All these guys that moved up to the AHL, majority of them all got cut and they got sent back. And they have a guaranteed contract. They can't get cut because of a two-way contract. So guess who left the last guy out? And the coach is like, I don't want to cut you. You're like one of the best guys here, but I have to let you go because of contract.
Heartbreaking.
Okay, listen to this. This is a great story so far, right?
Totally.
He comes back. Now he can't play for Guelph because he's ineligible because he basically had signed his pro contract. That got voided, but it doesn't matter. It was too late.
Yep.
So the kid has to sit out, go to school, and then in January he's eligible to play for Guelph. Right? It's for the second half of the season. He probably was the leading point getter second half of the season in the whole league. Okay,
that's unreal.
Finish the season, done. Thank God. Okay, comes back. Now this was last year. Plays a full season. First team All-Star. I think he was the third or the fourth leading scorer in the country, not just in the league. Win this cup. Wins the championship. Sets up the winning goal in the fourth overtime. Dude, we were at this game. It was in Guelph. It was freaking insane. It's like 1:00 in the morning, and these kids are still playing to win this cup. To see him raise that cup, dude, after everything he's been through, it was like the greatest thing I've ever seen.
That's unbelievable.
So now, just to give just real quick, he plays in Guelph, right? He's got another season. Guess what? They canceled the season pretty much because of COVID, right?
There's so many stories like that.
He just got a pro contract to go play in Italy. So in the Swiss Italy league. So how cool is that? Like pro now, he's got a full contract. He's going over to play pro. Like who knows, right? So it's one of those things where I always say the ones who make it to the top are the ones who never quit. Yeah. You survive your way to the top. And that's a long story, but dude, that's probably like the craziest story.
I mean, that's commitment. And we talk about mindset. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, integrity and strength and internally that you need to have, to stay on that path and to stay committed, to go through injuries. I mean, it's amazing. We could talk all day about these individual, accolades and the things that you've done. Amazing, resume of success with these guys. But I want to talk a little bit too about, I know you have very specific beliefs in nutrition, which is obviously close to our hearts as, PVL and Fit Foods. Take us through, because I know on the surface, you're very clean. You believe in single ingredients. I mean, we could talk nutrition and supplements here, but I know, you have necessarily beliefs in artificial sweeteners and all those types of things. Go into a little bit of that and sort of what your philosophies are that you extend to your teams, to your players.
Yeah, definitely. Like when it comes to the athletes, the first thing I start to instill in them is we're what we call qualitarians. And that's my wife's term. I don't take credit for that.
Okay.
So shout out to her. She always came up with that term. It's quality first when it comes to anything that you put in your body, right? So anything you take in, whether it's food or supplement, and then just to go one step further, this includes media, TV, music, anything that's an input, which means you absorb it into your body. We want to really emphasize quality, because that quality is basically going to determine how well you recover, how nutritionally dense those things are, and basically also what they're going to do in your body. So I always say food is a language, meaning you put something in your body and that piece of food tells your body to do something.
Yeah,
And I
a
know
signal.
we were talking about carbs today, for example, right? And how everyone's so scared of carbs. And I was talking how we use total reload and additional carbs after a training session because I want to turn on insulin, right? I
Glycogen,
want
yeah.
to tell the body to go from catabolic state, breakdown to call it an anabolic state, a recovery state. And we use simple sugars to do that, for example.
Mhm.
So if you're eating processed foods, if you're eating fast food, the nutritional value of that is not great, but also it's very processed. And that basically turns your body into what's called a defense mode. It's protecting itself from a lot of chemicals
Yeah.
that are in those things. So it's not going to absorb them. It's going to actually block your body from absorbing them. So now all of a sudden, like you're not getting in nutrients. It's the guy that eats, 8,000 calories a day and is starving because there's no nutritional value
Isn't that
in the
amazing?
food
Yeah. Yeah. It's
that
just
he's
going
eating.
in and coming out with without any
Yeah,
proper reaction to the
it's
body.
it's just going right through the body because the
Yeah.
body is like, I'm not taking that in. The body's super intelligent, right? And whether that comes to like food or even like hydration, I'm super big on, right? Like I'm very specific on hydration with my athletes. So like you're drinking, tap water, for example, that has no minerals in it. It's basically dead water. And you're drinking a ton of water and you're fucking dehydrated
It's
because
amazing.
like there's no minerals in that water. So you're not actually getting the minerals you need to hydrate. So it's all about quality. And then when it comes to supplements, for me, it's about being very strategic on what we know is being lost or used up in the
Right.
body, right?
That's
So
a great way to look at it.
we protocol supplements as that, right? Like you're not going to really get enough magnesium by eating leafy green vegetables in many cases, right? So we're going to program some magnesium. We use creatine with a lot of our athletes, and we were talking about that the other day.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
we use the PVL Creapure because that's Creapure creatine monohydrate, basic, no flavoring, no added
Yeah,
ingredients. We just want to use that creatine to help obviously energy system recovery, but it's also been shown to increase like muscle protein synthesis as well.
absolutely. Yeah.
There's been a lot of good research on that. We use amino acids because then I can start to look at the ratios of amino acids and start to control that. So really just it's all about the recovery window when it comes to supplements. I'm using supplements and food to help my athletes recover more than I use it to help them perform, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's funny because I think there's so many. I mean, in our industry, like, of course, the marketer's dream and everything like that, the guy's going to take every supplement under the sun.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, if a supplement is just that. If your food is not on track, I mean, there's obviously an argument if you're not getting enough nutrition that you need more vitamins. But food has got to be the thing that dictates the rest of the diet and the recovery and the supplementation. And I think that's an important thing to remind people of. You can buy all these great products, but you have to have the foundation, like we talked about yesterday of just that, complete approach.
Yeah. And you can even eat like if you saw the way I eat, like it's a lot of variety, a lot of high quality, but I still take supplements because I think that there's certain things that I'm burning off even myself
Sure.
that I'm not going to be able to get. I'm not eating enough food to get that. So I think the food is the foundation. The food is the recovery, the fuel, and the supplements are like that little added edge to, again, aid in that recovery. And I think they're really important.
Yep. What do you look at in terms of, of all the people sort of that you train and, you've been down a long road with a lot of athletes, a lot of different personalities, a lot of backgrounds. What's the common trait that you see in success? Like the biggest thing that you see is consistent maybe with a big group of people that make it to the next step.
Oh man, that's a loaded question, dude. I think the common trait that I see of people who actually make it is people that are what I call coachable. So
Open to ideas.
yeah, open-minded and coachable. And I always, harp on my athletes. I'm like, you got to be coachable because like I'm nice. Like I'm really nice to my athletes. I'm not the guy that yells at them or gets on their case. Like sometimes I think I'm too nice sometimes, but I'm like, your coach and your team is going to be an asshole. most cases, and they're going to be on you because they don't have the time to spend with you one-on-one. They're thinking about the whole team. They're thinking about their job. So they don't really give two shits about you as long as you're winning, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So being coachable, even in the worst times, I think is probably the most important trait, meaning you know that you don't know everything, and you know that you still have room to improve constantly. And
Talent
when you're
meets
coachable,
work ethic.
yeah, right. So if you're coachable, you will continue to grow, thrive, and excel to the next level. So I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then you just said something that just sparked my memory or made me think. You just said talent meets work ethic. So one of the philosophies I have with my athletes is, and I do this with their parents, and I make sure that they're reminded of this, is we don't reward talent, we reward effort.
Very good.
And this is a thing that happens way too often where people are like, and especially with these kids, dude, there's what we call hangers on. You're so amazing. You're so good.
Yeah.
You know, you're so fucking skilled. Like, whoa.
Blow
and I'm
up
like,
yeah.
Right. We're always like that. You played hard or you went hard. And with all my athletes, after they play a game or have a big competition, we always get on the phone, like usually the day of before and the day of after. I usually talk to my athletes. And after the conversation is never, did you win? Did you score? How good? I don't give a fuck about that.
Right,
I'll say, how did you perform? Meaning relative to your level, right? How did you perform? And what did you learn? These are the only things that really take away that conversation. So we can measure their effort, and then we could see what they can take from it. Like and then we go, okay, now what's next? Versus like, did you score? No, because if you didn't score, that means you suck or you're shit.
That's
versus
right.
like you played an amazing game. You know, you worked hard, you were hard to play against, you know, you shut the other team down, whatever that is, because everyone has a different role on the team. So you constantly reward effort, and you really try to stay away from rewarding talent, because all these kids are, dude, they're so skilled,
right?
And they're so talented, and everyone's telling them that. And like parents and coaches, you need to get out of that headspace of telling your kids and your athletes how great they are, and really emphasizing how hard they're working and how much they're putting into it. You know, we always say, like, there's only a couple of things you control as an athlete, right? It's how you prepare, how you respond to each situation, and the effort that you put out. That's all you control. You don't control if you win or lose or none of that shit. So get your headspace out of that and keep your headspace on those three things, and you'll always come out ahead.
It's amazing. I love the well-rounded philosophy, and I think it creates well-rounded athletes and well-rounded humans. Gee, we could do this all day, man. And I think
I'm good to go all day. I love talking about
it. Lends itself probably to another podcast, because, you know, I'd like to get even more specific. I'll leave you sort of with just one last question, a little bit lighthearted, but I think it's always funny. We talk about being in the gym. What's one exercise that you see everybody do incorrectly?
Okay. It is actually the exercise that I use the most with my athletes. Okay. And that is any variation of the deadlift, or we call it hip hinge.
Okay.
Hinge or deadlift.
I still don't know if I do that right.
If you said G, you can only do one exercise with your athletes for the rest of their life. I would do deadlift or hip hinge.
Is that
done
core?
Incorrectly? No, it's from hip extension. So if you understand sports, it's all about propulsion or acceleration, which basically means moving forward quickly, right?
Absolutely.
And propulsion acceleration is all a product, not all, but primarily a product of hip extension. So basically it's that drive, right? So imagine, like, if you're running, your foot's out in front of you and then it plants on the ground. All the power comes from when it plants till that leg ends up basically behind your body. Does that kind of make sense?
Like, no, yeah, I get the visual. Yep.
Right. So that is hip extension. So explosiveness and power, if you want to do a vertical jump, most guys jump with their knees or their quads, which is why they have too many injuries. If you use your hips to extend,
I see.
Again, hip extension is it's the creme de la creme of high performance, right?
Yeah.
So, and also core stabilization, upper back stability, lat stability. There's so many variables going on. Grip strength also, which is a huge proponent of overall strength. That is actually everyone fucking up.
Yeah.
Because their angles are wrong. So like I'm a biomechanics nerd, which if you ever come and I have assess you one day, you'll be so entertained by it. But like the biomechanics of it and knowing where your leverage points are and knowing where you're really getting the work done in your hips versus your lower back or your upper back. Or even a lot of people like do a deadlift with their quads, meaning like they bend their knees a lot and they kind of come down.
I get that. Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, there's different variations. But the problem with, again, I know we're gonna come around out of time here, but dude, I love talking about this shit.
Yeah.
By the way, we should come back and just do one on training.
No,
training.
I think that's what we need to do. Yep.
We could talk training for athletes specifically forever. But just quickly, everyone's focused on the exercise, like trainers, so to speak, and that they're so focused on what is the exercise. But I don't look at the exercise. I look at the objective, meaning what do I want to achieve with this athlete first? What do they need to work on? And then I start to just, exercises are easy once you know what you're trying to achieve. People are focused on the exercise and not focused on the objective. So they miss out on the technique, if that makes sense. They miss out on a technique because they don't know what they're trying to do. They're too focused on
you can't correct what you don't know you're doing wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is the whole thing. So
practicing wrong, practicing habits that are not going to work for you long term.
Right. And they were wrong because you don't know what you're trying to hit. So you don't, and we talked about this the other day, right? About moving muscle versus moving weights.
Yep, totally.
And if you need to learn how to move muscle first, and then you learn how to move weight. So deadlift, number one, or deadlift variations. We do single leg deadlifts. We do offset deadlifts. We do 100 different types of deadlifts in my training center. But that's the creme de la creme, dude.
Well, it's fascinating, my man. Like I said, we could talk a lot longer. It's going to lend itself to another episode, but I'm sure this episode on its own is going to spur a lot of questions from listeners and viewers. Where can we find you? How can people find you? Where can they get the G qualification? Let us know how to get a hold of you and PK.
So website is strong-athlete.com. If you just Google Strong Athlete, you'll find that pops up. Social media at Strong Athlete. You can find me on either one of those. And then we also have our podcast, which is the Strong Athlete Life, soon to be aired with yourself, the man.
That's right.
We had you on the show, so that will be coming out in a few weeks. You can check out the podcast. Lots of great information. We have I think 72 episodes, and there's all kinds of stuff: training, nutrition, mindset, stories of athletes. We had a lot of cool athletes on there. So yeah, man, that's where people can reach out, ask me any questions. And brother, I'm down to come on whenever you need to talk shop, and it's what I love to do. So this is fun.
All right. A pleasure. And good guys making great athletes and good people, and that's what it's all about. So, until next time, and everybody else, be safe and keep well from your friends at PVL.